trying to peruse the papers this morning. I hope that you had a great night, and we're here that even as we peruse, we make sure that you are as well updated if you've not grabbed your copy. Welcome on board. My name is Linda Alela. This is Morning Cafe right here on TV47. It's always good to have you join us. And yes, let's see what the day has in store for us. I keep saying that, well, evidently it's a politically charged season, as we all expected that it could have been different in terms of just people running away from politics the August 9th after that declaration by the Supreme Court. But it looks like, as the Swahili people would say, mambo bado. And so we're waiting to see what shape we take politically. This, as we've witnessed the battle royale, as one would want to call it, between the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the country's president, that is President William Ruto. And of course, yesterday, coming from from South Africa, that is the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, as well, staging a show at Kamkunji grounds in relation to what he says, bungled elections, that is the 9th August election. And therefore, him and his team would then argue that upon the directive, or upon reading what it is that the whistleblower had to say, yes, the purported whistleblower, then they say they do not recognize the government of William Ruto. And therefore, we wait to see just how this will be received. There's going to be a lot of reactions in relation to the same. And this morning, I'll be looping in pundits so that they can help us decipher on this. And we get to see what next. We'll be having the Honorable Member of Parliament of Embakasi North joining us. That is James Kakuya, as well as, Advocate of the High Court, Dunstan Omari. We'll also be having Professor Macharia Monene, who joins us for this very conversation. Professor Macharia Monene is a political historian and also the chairperson or the executive director of County Governance Watch, and as well governance expert Kevin Osido. So we want to have this very important conversation as we get to chart the way forward for the country, or perhaps just to unravel and unpack what are the possible outcomes of this declaration by the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the Azimio team, and just how then the government will respond to the same. Aside from it, there's so much that is as well happening. And speaking of the polls, it's not just happening right here in the country, or the political charged season is not just in the country, but as well in Nigeria. We seek to see just who will take it over from Buhari. It will be charged moment as well, and we all understand how the people of Nigeria have not been so happy about the reign of President Buhari. And of course, in this very season of his, there's been lots of talks of secession, that is the Biafrans wanting to go their way. So 10 factors that could affect outcome of Nigerian polls are also articulated on the newspaper this morning, and that is on the Standard newspaper page 27. Also in the Global Fraternity, what is playing out in Britain: Prime Minister orders probe into party boss tax room. Story captured on page 28 and has been making headlines for the better part of this month. And of course, we'll be looking at all this and so much more. And those are the key stories that you see covered in the Standard newspaper. And of course, we have the Bridler's bombshell. That's one key story that we'll be discussing. Actually forms the basis of our conversation this morning, also getting to understand what is left of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that even in this conversation that has been going on, they say that the Cherera 4 had plots to make sure that there is a runoff. And we'll get to see the bottom of it, as these key lawyers try to argue it out in terms of getting to the bottom, and perhaps those ones in the focus of saving Masit, and also those ones in the focus of saving the face of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, a case that continues upon the exit of the Chebukati 3, and that officially one would want to say that the commission is not occupied at this very moment. And then the president also signing the IEBC bill, and also the conversation of when we get or how we get the next commission is also officially ongoing. And this will be looking at as we continue with the broadcast in the side, Arsenal are running, not growing weary. A story captured on page 40, just looking at what played out over the weekend. That is on Sunday, quite a heavy match hitting the Manchester United team on the other side. Indeed, a match that was highly celebrated by the Arsenal fans. Those are the key stories on the front page of the Standard newspaper. Let's see what the Daily Nation has in store. And living on ARVs, 2 young women born with the killer virus share their life experiences, and we are constantly reminded to be careful so that we try at least and limit the spread. And also for those ones, who are on ARVs, to constantly follow the medication as should be. And we also have this story as well on matters Arsenal. Arsenal silenced doubters with win over Manchester United. That's a story captured on page 35. And away from it, Azimio claims Odinga won the election, but it was stolen in favor of Ruto. That is the key story, or the big story this morning. And so it's the battle for these two. Cherera 4 held secret meetings, says Gulie. A former IEBC commissioner has recounted just how 4 dissenting colleagues used to secretly meet at anniversary towers in Nairobi, even as provided more details about events that preceded the declaration of Dr. William Ruto as president-elect. A story captured on page 4. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who is now the opposition leader and the leader of Azimio One Kenya Alliance, says, "We ask our people to say no to the UDA regime. This regime and its unfortunate and unfair policies must be resisted, and the resistance starts today." And on the other side, the president says, "I want to tell them to forget about any handshake. The government is not going to be blackmailed to serve the interest of a few people and their families. Are they spoiling for a handshake?" A conversation that is on, and what we'll be having this morning. So it's a head-to-head as the opposition leader Raila Odinga, landed into the country yesterday and charged a reception and delivered his bombshell on the disputed August 9th, 2022 presidential election. And therefore, his Azimio camp will not recognize President William Ruto's win. And the president accused his rival of stoking a political crisis in quest for a handshake. This we'll be discussing as we continue. Pay boost for civil servants after review of allowances. That is a story that is on the back page of the Daily Nation. On the front page, expounded on the back page. Let's see what it says. And that civil servants' house allowances have been increased. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission has been reviewing this civil service allowances to curb the theft and the aspect of wastage. SRC also reviews hardship allowance and making it standard within a job group. Those are the key stories on these two papers that I have. That is the hard copies. Let's briefly look at what the People Daily speaks of this morning. Definitely as a story on this protest by the Azimio One Kenya Alliance team. Raila Ruto opened new battlefront. Is it a battlefront, or what is it for the country? And of course, we'll be looking to see what it will all be about as we have this discussion that is very, very important. Raila Ruto opened new battlefront. And this in relation to also that session that was held at Kamkunji grounds, and Azimio leader jets back with raft of new demands, including for Ruto administration to step down. But President says that in an old tactic and rules out a handshake. Reforming IEBC now a hot political issue. That is a story captured on page 4, 5, and page 6 of the People Daily, and we seek to see just how this will be received in the country for us to be able to delve deeper into it. And yes, those are key stories that we have, perhaps the main one also that has been captured on the People Daily, and allow us to now shift gears and take a look at some of the stories that we have as well prepared right here Yes, I'm just trying to get Raila Ruto open new battle. Yes, that is one of the People Daily, another top state officer of the book. Oh yes, this one is very important as well, and I'm sure it's a story that we're carrying, that the DPP has dropped 1.1 billion case against NHIF boss. That is from, and of course that is on the graft case, a story captured on page 7. We see just how this will be received, even as legislators, on the other hand, are piling so much pressure over delay of CDF cash, and of course the members of the National Assembly who are on a retreat, that is of induction for committees at the in Mombasa. Yesterday also pulled out this staged sort of more of a protest to say that they would want for the CDF funds to be released so that they're able to proceed and work. Some of them actually go to levels of speaking of impeachment of the Treasury CS, and then we get to see what this week's long retreat is going to yield in terms of this and so much more. Allow us to take these stories. The future of devolution is bleak, with the Council of Governors raising concerns over delayed disbursement of funds, that is by the National Treasury. And according to the Council, the counties have not received disbursements for the past 4 months, making it impossible for devolved units to function. This report by Collins Lusweti takes a closer look at the cries of the county bosses and the impact of this financial crisis on the devolution.
The county bosses are once again aggrieved by what they described as failure by the national government through the National Treasury to release money to counties in a timely manner. The chairperson of the Finance, Planning and Economic Affairs in the Council, Fernandez Baraza, says a total of 101.1 billion Kenya shillings has not been disbursed to the county governments.
We know the president means well, and we want to see action that actually the government is supporting devolution by releasing the funds on time.
The council say the last disbursement to counties came on 23rd December 2022, which was a late disbursement for the October 2022 allocations. The arrears now stand at 10.6 billion owed to 16 counties for the October 2022 allocation, 31.4 billion owed to all 47 counties for the November 2022 allocation, 29.6 billion owed to 47 counties for the December 22 allocation, and 31.4 billion owed to 47 counties for the January 2023 allocation. This, they say, has hampered service delivery at the counties.
No project, no county, I'm sure, which is carrying out any project, even if there was the issue of paying pending bills, you cannot, because what you do, the salary is meant for October, you pay for November, December, and it's not gross. What you do is that you pay net. That's how it is in many cases. Therefore, we are in bad state, I can tell you, as counties.
The council has also rejected the National Treasury's projected allocation to county governments of Kenya shillings 380 billion for financial year 2023-2024. As equitable share of revenue, saying it reduces the allocation by a lot. They further say the projection is against the provision and spirit of the Constitution on revenue sharing, which provides for at least 15% of nationally raised revenue be allocated to counties. The county bosses are now proposing an adjustment of revenue growth of at least 15% to bring county government's allocation to minimum of 425 billion Kenya shillings for the financial year 2023-2024.
What we want is a more rational criteria of justifying at least a reasonable increase to county. That's why we are asking for a minimum of 15%, which amounts to 425 billion, as opposed to the amount which has been proposed that represents only 2.6% of 10 billion.
The council earlier today met the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Economic Planning, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, to express its concerns while challenging the national government to ensure county staff receive their salaries in time, just like those working for the national government. Kisii County Governor Simbarati says nothing tangible is happening at the counties, which are faced with huge pending bills.
The question we want to ask Treasury, as we did ask in the morning, is that let them find it necessary, especially if it was the case, for salaries, because other civil servants receive their salaries on time. which is not the case with the employees at the county level.
Collins Lusweti, TV47, Nairobi.
And the Anti-Corruption Court has allowed the state's application to drop 1.1 billion shillings charges against former NHIF CEO Geoffrey Mwangi. In his ruling, Senior Principal Magistrate Victor Wamkumile said the court has allowed the prosecution's request due to lack of enough evidence, as Zainab Mohammed details.
While giving his judgment, Senior Principal Magistrate Victor Wamkumile said the DPP provided adequate reasons for dropping the charges, referencing Article 157, Sub-Article 6 of the Constitution that empowers the DPP to discontinue at any stage any criminal proceedings instituted by his office before a judgment is delivered.
Under Article 157(6), the DPP has powers to institute and undertake criminal proceedings against any person before any court of law. He also has powers to terminate the charges at any point in time for reasons that he may deem fit. The power to discontinue a matter, again, is donated under Article 157(6)(c) of the Constitution, and it's subject to permission of the court under Article 157(11).
He further granted the DPP 15 days to review the entire file against CEO Simon Ole Kigoti and 16 others and inform the court of the way forward.
I find that sufficient grounds have been laid in support of the application, and I therefore allow the case against accused number 2 to be withdrawn under Section 87A of the Criminal Procedure Code. But again, I still insist, and as the prosecution has conceded, there is need to review this entire matter. I am now giving the prosecution 15 days to review the entire file and come up with the way forward.
It is the second time the DPP is dropping charges in this case, with the first time being when charges were dropped in June 2020 against Web Tribe Company and its director Danson Muchemi. Mwangi, alongside 20 other individuals, including NHIF Audit Committee members, were in 2018 arrested and charged over the loss of 1.1 billion shillings at NHIF. Last year, Mwangi made an attempt to have his graft case terminated following the withdrawal of the charges against Web Tribe, but his plea was rejected. The case will be mentioned again on February 10th. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
In a dramatic turn of events, over 200 members of the National Assembly walked out of an induction retreat that is Monday in a protest of the failed disbursement of the National Government Constituency Development Fund (NG-CDF). And members of parliament are furious over the delayed disbursement of CDF funds, stating that they have only received 7 million, with 2 million earmarked for administration and 5 million for bursaries. The members of parliament were expecting at least 50 million for bursaries in their NG-CDF accounts and deemed their walkout as genuine and not politically motivated.
Kwamba kuna pesa ya kutuleta hapa kwa 5-star hotel, ya kutupatia 5-course meals, na hakuna pesa ya kupeleka wanafunzi katika mashule yetu. Very simple. If there is money to bring us to this expensive hotel, then there should be money to take our kids back to the school.
Tunasema no CDF, no meeting. We have sleepless nights. Our constituents are calling us each day and they are saying that they want to go to school. Now what are we supposed to do? We cannot accept this meeting to go on unless and until we get the funding.
That is what we are saying as members of parliament. We can't stay here while our children are out there. No GAF, no CDF, no meeting until we are told from Treasury what is going on. That is when we will be ready to sit here and listen to anything that is going to take place within this week.
Kwamba tumekataa mkutano. Wanafunzi sahi wanaenda shule na hawa ni ovans, hawana namna na wachapewa pesa na ni haki yao, na rais alikuwa anasema kwamba tuangalie watoto. Sasa hii ni ajabu. tumetoa pesa ya Aslavan, tuliapprove hiyo. Tukaapprove hii pesa zingine zote. Ya CDF nini inafanyika? Na kwa nini jambo linasemwa ndani ya bunge na haiheshimiwe? Bila hiyo heshima ya kuheshimiana, ndivyo tunasema leo mpaka yule anayehusika akuja atangaze rasmi kwa nini wanakataza watoto wa Kenya pesa sawa.
It is not morally right for us to sit here, yet there is no disbursement of CDF and affirmative action fund. The school administration cannot allow children to be in school without fees. And most of them have actually applied for bursaries. And we are here seated waiting for, otherwise we cannot sit. We have no moral authority to sit here, and our children are not going to school. So we are praying and asking that CDF, Affirmative Action Fund, be released, and then the meeting will continue.
They had made a promise they will be giving out 2 billion every week. That is the promise they gave to us. So how else, unless and until we put this proper pressure, or they come and give us a concrete explanation as to why this CDF has not been released. So we support the government in every other way, but on this particular matter, we need a clear, concurrent statement by the cabinet secretary in charge of Treasury. It is us who vetted him to be in that position, and so he cannot be issuing statements that are not factual.
Learning was paralyzed in Kaptoboi and Toroso primary schools in Mount Elgon, Bungoma County, following a standoff between parents and teachers. Parents denied teachers access to the school for allegedly failing to deliver, citing poor grades recorded in last year's KCPE exams, as Andren Kilemi reports.
Day 1 of Term 1 at Kaptoboi and Toroso primary schools. A stalemate ensued as parents denied teachers access into the schools for allegedly failing to deliver. The agitated parents further citing poor grades recorded in the last national examinations.
Wanafunzi katika hii shule wote saizi tunaongea, shule ilikuwa na wanafunzi zaidi ya 1500 lakini imepungua hadi watoto 320. Na kuanzia kesho najua kwamba maybe wale watafungua shule wanaweza pungua zaidi hadi watoto 200. Na hiyo yote inaletwa, shida hiyo yote inaletwa na mwalimu mkuu. Mwalimu mkuu aweza kuongea na walimu kwa shule, aweza kaleta walimu pamoja na wazazi. 3 years down the line, hatujaona mkutano ya general meeting.
According to parents with children at Kaptoboi, the school has been recording poor grades in the national examinations, with the first candidate scoring 250 marks in last year's KCPE exam, while the last candidate scored 137 marks out of the possible 500.
Kwamba ofisi iweze kumuondoa mwalimu mkuu na tuweze kupewa mwalimu ambaye anaweza kushughulikia matakwa ya watoto wetu.
Naomba serikali ituone na itusaidie. Ituondolee hata kama ni principal atoka aende, headmaster atoka aende, na watu waachie walimu wetu. Hasa leo wamepigwa transfer. Hao walimu moja kwa mizigo kwetu.
The parents now want the government through the Teachers Service Commission to come in with speed and to transfer the respective school heads for allegedly failing to fulfill their mandate. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Lack of enough infrastructure in some secondary schools is posing a challenge to the admission of Form 1 learners who will enroll in their respective schools in 2 weeks. Some of the school principals say the schools do not have enough classrooms and dormitories. Our senior education reporter Sharon Baranga reports.
Form 1 students are expected to report to school on 8th February for first term, and as principals of secondary schools prepare to receive the students, some of them say the capacity they have in schools is not enough for the number of students they expect to receive.
Any visitor who comes here, this is our national.
Such is the case at Moimbiruri High School in Embu County.
We feel so squeezed. Of course, there is a lot of congestion in the school, and most of the facilities are not enough. 279 who went, and those who are 4 streams, we are receiving another 400 plus, that is 80 streams. And of course, problems of now dormitories and classes.
The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Belio Kipsang, advised heads of schools to use the capitation funds they receive from the government to rehabilitate and expand infrastructure in schools.
Fortunately, with the classes, we had 3 classes for junior secondary, so we are going to use those ones. But we have a challenge in the dormitories. What we are doing is now we are trying to construct new dormitories, of course, with the limited resources and the laboratories.
In 2018, the government introduced 100% transition policy to secondary schools, a move that seeks to ensure all learners in the country access basic education, but at the same time, it is causing a strain on the infrastructure in a number of schools.
And still on matters education, on the first day of schools reopening across the country, parents have expressed mixed reactions. Some parents have lamented the difficult conditions of life and are waiting to send their children to school after several weeks. However, others have welcomed the return of the old school calendar, stating that this will reduce the pressure of covering the syllabus and as well paying fees, which has been a concern for the last 3 years. Chichi Josephine brings you more on that.
Parents in Nakuru County have lauded the return of the traditional school calendar, saying the same will ease pressure in syllabus coverage and fees payment that has haunted them for close to 3 years.
Wakati huu tunahisi ya kwamba kuna kupumzika kidogo, kwa sababu ukiangalia kweli pale nyuma sababu ya corona tumekuwa na calendar ambayo inaitwa crash program. Tumekuwa tunakimbizwa sana kihela, mambo na kulipa fee, mambo kushughulikia materials zinahitajika shuleni, lakini sasa mambo yamerudi kama kawaida. Kama wazazi tunahisi ya kwamba tumepata wakati mzuri ambao tutapumua kidogo.
At the same time, booksellers have said that they expect a boom in business, especially after the return of the normal school calendar.
I've come to buy books, textbooks, and I would say the prices are high than we expected. And also uniform, if you go to the uniform part, the prices are also so high.
Tunaona biashara sio baya sana, kwa sababu tunaona wazazi wengi wanakuja wakinunua vitabu na hata wengine wakichukua uniform. Na sisi kama Partment Bookshop tulikuwa tumejitayarisha vizuri, kwa sababu tulijua kuna mambo ya grade 7 na vitabu ya grade 7 yote tuko naye.
Meanwhile, Milimani Primary School in Naivasha has been overwhelmed by a large number of students joining the institution. The management of the school says that the school has a number of 78 teachers against more than 4,000 students, which makes it difficult to learn in the school.
Ile challenge ambayo tuko nayo saa hizi ni ya wazazi wengi sana leo wamefika, wanaomba nafasi ya shule hapa hivi, ingawa tuko na upungufu wa madarasa na pia walimu, because kwa saa hizi jumla tuko na wanafunzi zaidi ya 4,600 na walimu ni 75 pekee.
And classes at Technology Primary School in Kiharu constituency, Murang'a County, are congested due to high number of pupils admitted. The school head teacher saying that the school is contemplating on constructing more classes to cater for the rising number of pupils in the school.
Tuko na watoto wengi sana kutoka private schools. Tumerealize hata desk za wanafunzi za watoto wawili sasa wanakaa wanne na bado wanaendelea kuja, lakini tunajiandaa, tutaona vile tunaweza kuaccommodate watoto wote.
In Turkana County, parents have lamented over the high cost of living that has also led to difficulty in providing the equipment needed in schools, especially for the CBC curriculum.
Naona mambo ya mashule kama leo wazazi wameamua tu wakae, kwa sababu mambo bado ni ngumu, ni mwanzo ya mwaka na hawajui vile mambo itakavyokuwa mwaka ikiendelea.
In addition, they have noted that the effects of drought are haunting them as many rely on livestock to educate their children, but their livestock died due to the drought, which is still affecting many residents.
Turkana County vile iko saizi ni changamoto sana, jua inawaka, mali hatuna, mbuzi imeisha. Hiyo ndio tegemeo, hiyo ndio shamba yetu yenye tunategemea hapa Turkana.
Similarly, in Kisii County, parents whose children were reporting to school for the term have complained for lack of funds to educate their children and are now urging the government to relieve them of the high school fees.
Nao walimu waangalie sana school fees, watoto wasifike kwa shule na kufukuzwa.
In addition, they complained about the increase in fares in public service vehicles, while the tax requirements proved to be difficult.
Transport imepanda, vitabu imepanda, kila kitu imepanda.
Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
Away from others' education, new claims have emerged during an appearance before the Agri Mchelule-led tribunal investigating the 2022 presidential election. Former Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC commissioners have submitted statements claiming that they received instructions and threats to declare Azimio leader Raila Odinga as the winner of the election or force a runoff. Our reporter Moige William closely followed the proceedings and filed this report.
In a major development in the ongoing investigation into Irene Masit, an IEBC commissioner who sided with Cherera for faction of the commission, retired commissioners Abdi Guli and Boya Molu have taken the stand as witnesses at the tribunal. This marks the first time they have testified in the proceedings, shedding new light on the events at the National Tallying Center. Retired Commissioner Abdi Guli was first of the two to appear before the much-anticipated Muchelule-led tribunal. During his 2-hour testimony, Guli made shocking claims, revealing that a group identifying themselves as members of the National Security Advisory Committee met with the commission and demanded that the IEBC declare Raila Odinga as the winner of the 2022 presidential election.
Then he went on to tell us the reasons for the visitation. And that if we declare that the results to go in one way, as he explained, which was in favor of William Ruto, that the country was going to ban.
During his testimony, Gulia revealed that at this point, the commission was split into 2 factions, one team led by the then Vice Chair Juliana Cherera, and including Commissioners Irene Masit, Justus Nyang'aya and Francis Wanderi, agreed to the NSAC demand to either declare Odinga as the winner or moderate the results. The team from the National Security Advisory Council was comprised of Attorney General Kiara Kariuki, Solicitor General Kennedy Ogeto, former Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutiambai, and Lieutenant General Francis Ogola, Vice Chief of Defence Forces.
So as an alternative, in the event that we do not announce whoever they wanted us to announce, then the message was that we should have a runoff, or we should ensure there is a runoff.
Former IEBC Commissioner Boya Molu testified next, and his account support the events described by Professor Gulie. Molu maintained that they received demands and threats from the visiting team led by Kihara during the meeting at the National Tallying Center.
After they left, after the NSAC team left, the CEO came in with the results and gave each one of us a copy. And then a debate took place, where 4 colleagues, Commissioner Irene being one of them, said that we need to moderate the result in line with NSAC demands.
In their testimonies, both Commissioner Guli and Molu, as well as former Chairperson Chebukati, emphasized that they did not give in to the demands made by the team of 4 from the National Security Advisory Council.
It was not in order for any commissioner to make any statements regarding supporting any particular candidate, because we didn't know who was the winning candidate.
Our role is simply to midwife and ensure that the will of the people is put into a statistical format and announced, not to moderate or to vet or to make any decision on it. The decision belongs to the voters, and they have done it on 9th of August.
Azimio la Umoja, through its lawyer Danstan Omari, has now called for the commission to have the party involved in the matter, citing that the name of the party has been adversely mentioned during the proceedings.
Azimio is not part of membership of the National Security Council meeting, and also Azimio will be asking for the many days that Bomas was alive, how many other people came to see Chebukati.
The Agre Muchelule-led tribunal is expected to hear from 2 more witnesses, among them former immediate IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati. Moige William, TV47, KICD, Nairobi.
President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua hosted politicians alleged or allied to the Jubilee Party at State House in Nairobi. Among those in attendance were former Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega and nominated Member of Parliament Sabina Chege. The president stated that the meeting's aim was to bring all Kenyans together, regardless of their political affiliations. The members of parliament also dismissed claims circulating on social media that they had left the Jubilee Party, stating that they are still active members of the party and have no intentions of leaving it.
Maito, how are you? Very good. Brigi. Yes. Very good. Okay, very good.
In the same ones for a long time. This story was produced by Rooney Regan.
Just minutes after opposition leader Raila Odinga landed at JKIA and later headed to the Kamukunji grounds, where he spoke to the masses about what transpired before, during and even after the 2022 general elections, President William Ruto could not hold his words, firing back at Raila and his colleagues.
Kwanza nyinyi mnatuharibia wakati. Mulikuwa na serikali. Mukaharibu serikali. Bei ya unga ikapanda. Sasa hivi mnaongea bei ya unga imepanda. Na nyinyi you are the cause. Sasa hizi tumetoa at least 230, imefika hapo karibu 180. In another 6 months itakuwa imefika 120. So nyamazeni tuwafundishe vile ya kuendesha maneno ya Kenya.
Raila in his speech mentioned that President Ruto did not win the August 2022 general elections and that his victory was stolen, citing that he does not recognize Ruto's presidency and his team in office.
Wameiba ushindi wetu. Hawataki waongeze matusi. Sisi tunadai haki yetu. Na tuko tayari kukufa kupigana kwa haki yetu.
According to Ruto, the opposition has no agenda for Kenyans and resorted to holding demonstrations every now and then, even when they lost it fairly and squarely. Ruto adding that he's not a coward at all and that he's not interested in sharing of power.
Wale jamaa wa system, kwa sababu wamechanganyikiwa, wamekwama, wamerudi katika ile maneno tena ya maandamano. Ile system yao na deep state yao haikuwasaidia. Nimesikia wakisema ati wanataka saba ifunguliwe. Sijui wanaishi nchi gani. Chebukati na IEBC walifungua saba zamani. Form 34A kutoka every polling station iko kwa portal. Form 34P iko kwa portal. Form 34C iko kwa portal. Hii saba wanasema kuuliza ifunguliwe ni saba gani? Unajua hawa watu wamezoea giza na ukora. Sijui kulikuwa na giza, kulikuwa na... Saa hizi tumemulika kila mahali, wamekosa mahali ya kujificha.
Another rally by Raila and his team is scheduled for the 29th of January at Jacaranda grounds.
Ile mkutano ambayo tuliahirisha ya kule Jacaranda Jumapili ijayo na 29 tutakuwa ni Jacaranda.
All right, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leader Raila Odinga arrived at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi at 12:30 p.m. Monday, fresh off his trip to South Africa. He quickly made his way to the historic Kamkunji grounds in Embakasi for a public consultation meeting, which began at 2:30 p.m. During the meeting, Odinga announced that he and his Azimio brigade will continue to hold public consultation forums in an effort to put pressure on the president, that is William Ruto, and his government to resign. Odinga claims that Ruto's administration is illegitimate.
12:30 p.m. Opposition leader Raila Odinga arriving at JKIA, Nairobi. At 1 o'clock, the journey to Kamukunji grounds started to perhaps inform his supporters how his August 2022 presidential win was reportedly stolen. Raila, flanked by Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa and George Wajakoya, among others. Odinga's motorcade snacked through Mombasa Road, then onto Haile Selassie Avenue towards Kamukunji grounds. At the Gikomba market, he waved
and being made by the older regime. Instead, we call on Kenya to reject the punitive order policies that are making life unbearable. Order is resorting to these policies because it was not ready and did not get any mandate to govern.
The ODM leader demanded an impartial body to carry out an audit of the 2022 elections. Odinga said if the status quo remains, Azimio leadership will not participate in the 2027 general elections.
We call on Kenyans to resist and demand the removal of the punitive taxes that have led to punitive costs of basic products and services, including unga, milk, sugar, school books, fuel, electricity, bus fare, paraffin, and school fees.
He said their public consultation forums will continue, with the next meeting to be held at the Jacaranda grounds on January 29.
Wawaze kututisha sisi. Sisi hatuwezi kutishwa na Bwana Ruto na Bwana Gachagua. Sisi ni wa Kenya na tutakuwa Kenya hii. Wameiba ushindi wetu. Hawataki waongeze na matusi. Sisi tunadai haki yetu na tuko tayari kukufa kupigana kwa haki yetu. Ile mkutano ambayo tuliahirisha ya kule Jacaranda Jumapili ijayo tarehe 29 tutakuwa na Jacaranda.
The fight for the heart and soul of one nation begins today. Na Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga yale amenena hapa, mimi niko hapa kutangaza wazi ya kwamba mimi Eugene Wamalwa na timu yetu ya Democratic Action Party of Kenya tunamuunga baba mkono.
I am here because of Raila. I live today because of Raila. If Raila was not there, I will not have the opportunity to be alive today.
Nchi yoyote haiwezi kuwa na amani ikiwa hakuna haki. There can be no peace without justice.
Now, with the return of high-octane politics in the country, Raila Amolo Odinga seems not to loosen his belt as he puts the Kenya Kwanza government on toes. Mike Kagwango, TV 47 from Kamukunji grounds in Nairobi.
You know, it's as if the conversation, it's as if the conversation has begun. Mheshimiwa tumeanza. No, it's fine. We are just discussing that story by Mike Kagwango, and that is to say the conversation has kicked off, you know, almost immediately. I wish we did not start with this and perhaps, you know, finished with that, but all the same, because it's the last story that we have played, and it's what Mheshimiwa, Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, is articulating too. I think we can always begin by discussing this. Yes, he's here. Honorable Jimmy Gakuya, thank you so much for creating time this morning. On the other side is none other than the Executive Director, County Governance Watch, and also a governance expert, Kevin Osido. Thank you so much for creating time. And for the very first time on Morning Cafe, I think we should be having drum beats as well as, you know, cylinder to just say, you know, a toast to him sitting on that set for the rest of time. Mheshimiwa Gonga toast bana. And from afar, cheers to the fact that we, for the very first time, have the constitutional lawyer, advocate of the High Court, political analyst, governance expert, Danstan Omari. Thank you so much for creating time to be with us, Wakili.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
For accepting my request to be with you.
Asante sana. And as well, we'll also be looping in Professor Macharia Manene briefly, who's joining us virtually also for this very important conversation, a political historian, and, you know, one that has been here long enough and can be able to speak to the cases of politics that are playing out in the country. And of course, as earlier publicized, we were expecting to get Dr. Barak Muluka, who's not able to make it this morning due to some other assignments, as well as Fred Okango. So gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. And to that very question that you are discussing, that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is spoiling for a fight, you think so? Or for a handshake?
Thank you, Rida. Allow me to salute the viewers wherever they are watching us from. I also appreciate that today, Omari, my lawyer, is part of the panel.
You know?
For the first time. For the first time.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. He's very instrumental.
Yeah.
And I am sure that, in fact, most of these issues, he understands them well. And he knows well where we are coming from and where we are heading to. Yeah. Coming to the issue, the headlines, let me say that, in fact, it is not a new thing or a surprise. We are used to what we call drama of Raila Odinga. And it's not the first time. It is even, what I can say, it is long overdue that Raila obviously starts this drama immediately after the results. This time around, he has given the country at least a bit peace, because now we are at least past, 5 months past the election. And him coming to the floor with this clamor of that we must resist this regime of William Ruto, to me, Kenyans understands very well where we have come from, and we have gone through all the processes that are required by the law. First and foremost is that the results and the winning of the election was done at the polling station. The rest at the bombers of Kenya was just a drama. And that is the beauty of our elections. That if the elections are announced at the polling station, if you can be able to hand those forms to the letter, you can get the results. Any other drama after is just a side show. And I can tell you, the pressure here is just a pressure to look for handshake. And I am very I'm very categorical that, in fact, William Ruto is very categorical that there will be no handshake. In this case, Raila should try to look for another game, but the handshake has no room in this particular government. I am wondering, just a week ago, Raila Odinga allowed all his team to join William Ruto in Nyanza events. Has this happened within 2-3 days that actually has backtracked that? You
don't know that there's a dossier that happened?
In the dossier, I can tell you the dossier has been drafted. The one who was purported to be the Smith, the
Vanguard,
the dossier releaser, actually has denounced it. And that is it. How can you force yourself with information that actually the one purported to be the author of the information has already denounced? This is pure propaganda. And I can tell you, if they have clear numbers and information, they should table. And I can tell you, it is too late for them. The case, the matter has gone the normal process. What we call Supreme Court has pronounced that actually the election was free and fair, and the results were that the election was fair.
Is it justice?
Any other propaganda, Linda, to me, is pushing Kenya behind.
And we'll come to the legal aspect of that, and it's good that we have Wakili here. But before then, a large crowd, colorful, congregation, or so to speak, if you want to call it, and, strong words, a bombshell that they call a dossier. And then finally, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga declares that he cannot accept the presidency of William Samoei Ruto, that this administration is as good as, gone. Why is it that it's about the Right Honorable Raila Odinga?
Me, I would say, if Raila is not satisfied, can he just get back to Uhuru Park? Let him be declared the people's president.
And we probably did not expect anything much.
Normally does. Yes, but actually there is nothing that he can give out to this country. Telling us to be on Sakarada on Sunday. To us.
And Kevin Osido, many will say that we expected that which the Right Honorable Raila Odinga declared. First of all, why is it about him? To imagine that a whole Kenya Kwanza government, would sit down to just discuss the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. They would go to, funerals to discuss the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Is it them that are projecting him more than it should be?
Thank you so much, Linda. I don't think that any politician in Kenya is projecting the former Prime Minister more than he should be. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga is the person that he is. And the reason as to why he is being discussed and talked about and projected in the manner that you probably presume is purely because of who he is. That when he calls for meetings, for instance, we have seen the large crowds that you are talking about, it is almost clear that people will definitely show up, and not just showing up, but they will actually show up in very big numbers. It therefore shows you that he more or less represents a select constituent and a group of people that probably would give us the numbers that we keep talking about, where the 15.1.2 million people that never turned up for this election to vote for the Kenya Kwanza government, because we had about 8.2 that abstained, more or less did not vote, and the almost 6.8 that voted for the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance. It therefore more or less boosts the presumption and the assumption by Azimio la Umoja that probably our numbers were stolen. But if you looked at the entire process in the manner in which the Constitution expected, Linda, all these steps have been properly executed and adjudicated. Whatever it is that the former Prime Minister is doing is purely political. And he's more or less learned how to navigate, mobilize, and go around governments to more or less get what he wants. It therefore looks very critical and clear that President William Ruto is not keen to maybe give him what he's looking for. I think for me, looking at these happenings and the kind of conversation that we've had here, including what we discussed, I think it was just a week ago on Monday, there are conversations going on to be able to contain, if I could say that, and maybe to accommodate the former Prime Minister and part of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance. Because remember that already the entire team of Jubilee has moved on. And they were actually with the president, I think, yesterday or the other day.
Was it the entire team now? We had Jeremiah Kioni on this other side. You cannot, he's the Secretary General, you cannot declare that Sabina Chege and Kanini Kega.
I am saying that the Jubilee team is almost moving on. Because the people that we are talking about as being entirely Jubilee, you know, we saw them with the president, and if you listen to what they have been talking about, other than Mheshimiwa Jeremiah Kioni and of course his utterances leading towards yesterday's meeting, it shows us probably how they are looking at Azimio la Umoja, but particularly ODM and the former Prime Minister. Look at the meeting yesterday. Who was present? You know, who was actually making the comments, other than Mheshimiwa Eugene Wamalwa and a few other leaders? It is almost being looked at as an ODM affair. And some people might even probably move it further and think that it is a Luo affair, whereas it actually is not. There are people who feel discontented with the manner in which the government is being run. There are people who feel discontented and uncomfortable by the manner in which certain processes by this Kenya Kwanza government are being handled. For example, basic needs of common citizens. Talk about education and school fees. Schools are opening, you know, kids are still at home. Parliamentarians were in an induction session yesterday, and they walked out saying we want our CDF monies and that government needs to speak. So probably there are people who are looking at these kind of arrangements by the former Prime Minister, and they're saying this could be an opportunity for us. And interestingly, Linda, the former Prime Minister more or less knows how to read the mood on the ground and the crowds around this country. And he's probably saying that I want to be that voice that wants to speak for people who feel downtrodden and people who feel like they are not being given what they deserve. Unfortunately, it could be like a saying that we normally say, ni kupigia mbuzi guitar. You know, you are playing this game, but the people and the person that you think needs to be listening to you is actually not listening to you. But takes me back to the question you asked. Why are they profiling him? Why are they talking about him? Are they lifting him higher than the person he is? I don't think so. Maybe the former Prime Minister is also pushing and getting ready for a discussion, which the president is almost saying, I am ready to discuss and have conversations, but it has to be done in a legal manner, in a framework that gives us the opportunity.
And we'll come to that.
For instance, as I finish, issues around the constitutional review, dignifying the office of the official leader of opposition, the letter that the president wrote, the conversations within the parliament, rather the National Assembly and the Senate. There are things which I think the former Prime Minister is not very keen to wait for, but he's saying, I must push for this agenda, and it has to be done, but it has to be done my way. Unfortunately, I don't think that this is the moment. I don't think the president is keen to have it the Raila Odinga way. The issues that he's raising are quite critical. But I think that there are issues which should have been dealt with before, and there are even ongoing processes. For instance, the tribunal by Justice, of course, the one that is handling Irene Masit concerns and the IEBC issues. Yeah. So if we allowed the former Prime Minister to have time and dispense and adjudicate over these issues in a constitutional and legal manner, it would be much more appealing to as bigger crowds of people who would probably think critically around our legal and constitutional processes, other than the political way that the former Prime Minister has picked. All right, Article 140 of the Constitution questions as to validity of presidential election. A person may file a petition in the Supreme Court to challenge the election of the president-elect within 7 days after the date of declaration of the results of the presidential election. Within 14 days after the filing of a petition under Clause 1, the Supreme Court shall hear and determine the petition, and its decision shall be final. If the Supreme Court determines the election of the president-elect to be invalid, then a fresh election shall be held within 60 days after the determination. And we say that we have gone through these constitutional processes, and therefore they do not go anywhere with these allegations that they make. But Wakili, this would have been the last question, but I will ask it now nonetheless. In the event that there's some truth in what is being said, and perhaps this is a conversation we should have for purposes of the future. Maybe you overlook this, but in future, if this is the route we are to take, and then there's someone who has challenged the election and they would come to prove that really, there was some bit of, malpractice that was conducted, to a point where it is satisfying enough, then what? I mean, can we stretch beyond what that the Constitution declares, or what?
Thank you very much. Let me lay the basis of the Constitution before I look at that question politically. One, the Constitution of these countries gives the guidelines on how one becomes the head of state.
Yeah.
William Ruto has followed that route to the final ceremony at Kasarani, where he was sworn in and he took an oath of office. That is a settled matter forever.
Okay, forever.
The only avenue available for anybody to remove William Ruto from office are two. One, impeachment, if they have numbers. That is a constitutional provision to remove President William Ruto. Two, to either seduce him, induce him, pressure him to resign.
Okay.
That is another option that is there. The Constitution provides that there can never be an unconstitutional manner in Article 3 of forming government in this country. Every manner, whoever forms government must form government through a constitutional process. The constitutional process has come to a closure.
Okay.
Other than those two grounds that are there. But within Article 37, where Raila Odinga has pitched his interest in picketing public demonstration, you take an approach globally.
Yeah.
That sometimes when people find they have no way, because government is the monopoly of violence, all guns in this country are owned by government. And governments worldwide sometimes find that demonstrations can push governments out of office. For example, if Raila Odinga carries 10 million people to State House, William Ruto will have to exit.
Yeah.
So with a lot of either bloodshed or those issues. So those are lessons that we've learned, that in the event that constitutional provisions fail, then the people, because in Article 1 it is said, we the people can exercise our power and our sovereignty through people we have elected or directly. So there is big question on that provision, and Mheshimiwa and William Ruto should be very careful. Why do I say that the Kenya Kwanza team should be very careful? When Raila Odinga, the election was not announced, Kenyans didn't want him to tell them anything. Even in Bondo, people told him, don't take us to the streets anymore. He read the mood and he kept quiet. He left the process to proceed. William Ruto has been the president for 3-4 months. What is it that now the people who never wanted to hear demonstrations are being excited
about
to the streets? It is what is called the economic realities
that are dawning,
that are there today vis-a-vis the Kenya Kwanza promises. The promises and the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza seems not to have been achieved. Kenya Kwanza has come out very clearly to defer the judgment. People are getting jittery. The people who are getting jittery, and that is why you are seeing Raila Odinga getting a rebuff from nowhere, are one, the Kenya Kwanza leaders who contested elections. Many have not been given the jobs. They either were promised or expected unrealistically. We are going to see nomads moving from Kenya Kwanza out of frustration that I came here. I was told not to contest as a member of parliament. I have not been given that. So that is the first exodus that we are going to see from State House. Two, because these people thought that State House is an employment bureau. People will go there and get jobs. That's the first exodus. The second one is the monetary expectations. That there are people who joined Kenya Kwanza with a view that they will get tenders, they will supply air, they will get money, they will get anything. It is not coming. State House has not become a bank to release resources. The third group are the citizens. The question about unga, the question about petrol, the question about the cost of living, the question of employment, the questions of hustler fund, the questions of how did the people in their own imagination understood the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza. I think the owners of the manifesto are not understanding that the people read the manifesto in their own way. Now that William Ruto and his team are telling people, oh, give us time. That impatience is what Raila Odinga is trying to galvanize. Let me give a very critical history.
Can we come to that history after a quick short break?
Yes.
A quick short break, because then, and I'm glad that you say maybe the people, interpreted the manifesto in their own way, because one would argue that it would be a bit unrealistic to imagine that in 100 days all this magic could have happened. We take a short break and then we come back to that. We also acknowledge the presence of Professor Macharia Munene, who joins us after the break as well.
Yeah, like you see, these are the fabrics we use for the sofas. Yeah, there are different types of fabrics.
Sabak. This is the best way to go. Eat color, eat raw, like this is alive. Well, 2022 is behind us. 2023 is here with us. What are your plans? We here at TV47's Morning Cafe have great plans for you. We're talking about information, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about the greatness for the year. So make sure that you're always with us every morning.
Kwa muonekano wao hauwezi ukajua waliopitia. Kwa sura zao zinapong'aa hauwezi ukafahamu changamoto zao. Nyuma yao ipo stori na historia. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kuweza kuwafahamu kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea. Nami Elizabeth Mutuku.
Member of Parliament Embakasi North, that is Jimmy Gakuya, as well as governance expert and the Executive Director, County Governance Watch, that is Kevin Osido, and Advocate of the High Court, Dunstan Omari. Briefly, Wakili,
yes,
on the fourth lot, you said?
The fourth issue, I am giving reasons as to why Raila is becoming important.
Yes.
The war on cartels that William Ruto has declared and given a ruthless deputy president called Gachagua to deal with them. Kenyans thought that Mother Karua was going to be more ruthless than Gachagua. But now the direction it is heading to, it is more ruthless in Kenya Kwanza government than it was under William Ruto, under Uhuru Kenyatta. Why? Anybody who was gazetted as a public servant, all those gazette notices have been revoked.
Okay.
And I'm advising those remaining, just resign and go away. Don't wait.
Before they come to you.
Don't wait, because the trend is coming. All these are parastatal heads, all these are military officers, all these are police officers. Everybody is heading out. 2, the people who funded Raila Odinga, their businesses are likely to be targeted. That is what they call the cartels. And you've had the governor for Embu say that we know who is funding this matter. We have had the president and the deputy saying we know. When people feel threatened, this is the situation that arose in 1982, where we changed the constitution and put it into a one-party state, and we created Section 2A. People had nowhere to go to. Multi-party demonstrations started. The same message I had from Kirinyaga, that we cannot be moved, is the same message the late President Moi said.
Yet he was moved.
The demonstrations became ugly. Moi he had to succumb.
And now that we have the member of Parliament.
Is he hearing?
Yes.
Then we have seen this type of agitation. And every time there's an agitation, the biggest beneficiary is the Kenyan. It is not Raila Odinga, it's not the head of state. Because when the president and his team are telling Kenyans that everybody who has an ID will have a KRA pin, and the M-Pesa will be looked at. If Raila Odinga does not go to the streets and make noise.
So this is a good thing for the country.
For the country, Kenyans celebrate. Because remember, in 2018 to 2022, where there was a handshake, anything President Uhuru wanted was going to
go through.
But this time, Professor Ndung'u at Treasury must think twice before they implement any tax implementation. The question of subsidy, that they have been removing every subsidy. Today, students are going to school. Parents are crying. I'm telling you, after yesterday, policies of Kenya Kwanza will now be asking, is Raila Odinga going to run away with this argument and convince more people? So what I'm very happy and celebrating is that we have a vibrant political space. It will not change that President William Ruto will be the president. That is already settled. But for the citizens, for the hustlers, the policies of Kenya Kwanza are now going to be carefully looked at, their impact on the common citizen of this country. So Raila Odinga is not a devil to me. For example, when you go to the Supreme Court, every other time an election petition has gone to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court gives new rules and new regulations for the betterment of the country. Every time there's a demonstration, there will be new amendment. For example, now, the election, only this matter, the chairman of the membership of IEBC. If Raila Odinga did not make noise, only Kenya Kwanza people could be that part. But the noise that now has been made, I'm telling you, Kenya Kwanza will go and say, how do we deal with this?
How do we look in this other?
How do we look at Because if Raila Odinga led the first demonstration on the PSS, my community, the Kisi, could have gotten a PSS slot. But because everybody was quiet, was quiet.
And if there's a community that has complained about that,
appoint anybody.
You lead the devolution.
No, I don't have the power.
You're not Raila Odinga.
Are you getting the point?
Yes.
Now they will be very careful on any decision they make.
All right.
Because they know it can attract them.
Listening to Mheshimiwa, it doesn't look like they're, shaken with this at all. Mheshimiwa, Wakili reminds you that you need to be careful. It's at this moment that you have your antennas up extra and you are on alert, because the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is not a kind of person that you just wish away. And not just him, but just looking at the history and the background that has been accorded to us by Wakili here, that this is about the common mwananchi. To imagine that they say, as Azimio, that we're going to hold a consultative meeting, and on the other side, nyinyi mnasema hii ni maandamano. And yesterday, perhaps just to prove you wrong, it was more or less like a peaceful session. That should tell you something. So just what is in plan, what is on the table to make sure that all this is quelled and in the best way possible for the government to be able to govern, for the Right Honorable Raila Odinga in a way perhaps to be tamed, if you want to call it that, and most importantly for the common mwananchi to benefit?
One thing, Linda, we are not facing a new, let me say, a new person in this.
But also a seasoned person, Mheshimiwa. You have to acknowledge that this is a seasoned person.
One thing, Linda, let me take you back. And I'll take you back to Kibaki regime, where it was very critical in the first term of Kibaki, when it came to a point after the bananas and oranges, and the spirit of the NAC government. But I can tell you, with all that hard wave, Kibaki regime survived to the letter. Even this one, it could be law. It could be at least let me say an issue if actually Raila is facing a new somebody in the name of presidency, but he's facing William Samoei Ruto, a man who understands Raila very well from long time ago. So I can tell you for sure, Raila will not tilt even an inch of this government. This one I can assure you and take this to bank. And this for sure. Whether Raila will like to incite Kenyans or not, this will not at any moment stop the regime of the current government to grow. First and foremost, I agree that in fact we have a lot of youth who are idle. Having such a big rally yesterday, a working day Monday, it tells you how idleness it is and how jobless people are. So do we really fight for job by this kind of trend? So I think that in fact whoever thinks that this is the route to go will take choice. Whoever thinks that actually the route has a solution to the issues of Kenyans, then they will take the route. And I can tell you for sure, getting back to that, in fact, Raila was defeated with very narrow numbers, which were close to 200. It tells you the rest of the team were almost half-half. And therefore, it is those who will need to forge forward for the betterment of the country, who will cling with William Ruto, but those who still have mentality that actually Raila is a solution to their issues must still cling there. But I can tell you, leader, politically, I am not seeing any future of this particular game, because games of numbers is what works. And where does the game of numbers work? First, it works from the registration, where numbers are the key. And I can see, going to yesterday's Jubilee team visiting the head of state at State House, it tells that now Jubilee is moving out of this particular Azimio cocoon. Then who will be left behind? Then the ones who will be left behind then seems is Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila himself, the gentlemen that we understand very well. So I can tell you, nobody will take Raila to any single police station. Nobody will arrest him. What will happen going forward? If Raila thinks that actually you will bring chaos, I am telling you, the softness that has been enjoyed during Uhuru tenure, he will not enjoy now. I am sure William will watch him, but the time it will come to a tale that actually his route is dangerous to the nation, then I am telling you that the government will take charge.
There are
but as much as constitutionally, Raila has his own right, constitutionally, to picket and to do a peaceful demonstration. As much as these guys are not stepping on anybody's property or anybody's goods, then I think that they can keep on and they can proceed.
And they have projected this conversation of, property, business and goods and all that beyond the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. They are formidable politicians in this brigade. Politicians that you can't wish away. Politicians that have interest. Kalonzo Musyoka has interest. Martha Karua has interest. Jeremiah Kioni, in as much as he's lost his seat, has interest. Why would we imagine that they would just wake up to craft things for purposes of just doing it? Don't you think that there's more than meets the eye? And maybe, in as much as we'd want to ignore them, or the Kenya Kwanza government would opt to ignore them, which they have not done successfully, they should just have to listen, as Wakili would say.
Linda, there's a vacuum that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance is actually filling. And that vacuum is the undoing of the Kenya Kwanza government, which is two things. One, to want to let Kenyans imagine that government is a quick fix. Because if you listen to how they speak, even in all these rallies, because Kenya Kwanza government is in campaigns, every single weekend, they're either in a county somewhere or they're in a church
campaigns
somewhere.
or Thanksgiving?
They are doing campaigns. And these campaigns largely narrow around the former prime minister. Yeah. And so Raila Odinga is setting the stage for Kenya Kwanza government. Kenya Kwanza government has failed to explain its policies and the agenda for which it told Kenyans that we are going to execute. The former prime minister and his team is actually filling that vacuum. And they are saying, if you want us to be able to do Hustler Fund, which has been tested, and unfortunately it is not as palatable, because if you go to the communities, you go to the counties, you go to the streets where we are almost every day and every night, most people are not repaying. And people feel very disappointed about the amounts, the limits that the government has given to them, because they have to struggle to add more money into the kit which the government has given to them. Whereas the communication and the conversation during campaigns and in almost all the national events that the president has been addressing, he makes it look like we know what it is, we'll give you money. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance, particularly the former prime minister, is coming up and saying, this thing is not working. And that is why yesterday was emphatically asking as many Kenyans as would listen and support him, listen to him and support him, reject UDA policies. Now, it is for the government to stop and think, sit back and ask yourselves. And it's not to tough talk like Mheshimiwa makes it look like, that it is a Monday, so people are jobless, they will go to the streets. Right. It is not for the opposition or for the former prime minister to create jobs. It is the government to set up an ample environment and draw strategies, communicate effectively on a plan of how you want to create employment. Linda, it's been about 3-4 months of President William Samoei Arap Ruto's government, and he's made very many promises. Some of us are keen lookers and watchdogs of what government says that it is doing. Most of these things, interestingly, are just words. You go to Nyanza where we were told there's going to be a fish industry. How many months has it been? And we've had very many conversations, even with the business community, trying to rally them that you don't have to wait for government, because these things have been said from this government to that government. Do the little that you can be able to do. Go to sugarcane growing areas that government is going to bring in, economic stimulus packages and just miraculously pray, and then sugarcane will grow, and then sugar will be minted. These things are not happening. So the government has made it look like we are magicians and we are miracle workers that are just going to pray to God and then things are going to happen. Whereas the issues that the Kenyan citizen is going through, where they want food now, they want markets for their goods now. Farmers who are doing milk, coffee, tea, and want these things exported out of the country so that they get more money and value addition by governments, they are waiting for these things, Linda, and they are not seeing government actually engaging in those processes. Yeah. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance is saying, we have the solution. And people are actually going to listen to them. Because it is also not right, in my view, to imagine that the strategies that the former prime minister used in 2007 to 2013 to 2018 is the same strategy that is going to work today. The dynamics of politics in Kenya have changed. Government and its ways of doing business has changed. The legal processes have changed. And even Kenyans themselves, those who are 18 years, 5 years ago, today they are no longer youth, they've moved on.
But just how much have we changed when you are talking about the fact that this is what the government promises, or this is what they are promising while on campaign mode, and then they get to power and we realize that it's not forthcoming, and then again there's that switch to what the Right Honorable Raila Odinga would say. Before you know it, then there's switch to this side. We think that Kenyans have matured democratically, but this is a show of gullibility.
It is, and in fact people are quite disenfranchised because of the manner in which we do our politics. Where I am saying we make it look so easy, like a quick fix. We'll just pick some cup and put it somewhere, then coffee will boil in. We haven't civically educated our people to understand that even government delivery of public goods and services is a process. It is not that we have the money, because Kenya Kwanza made it look like we're just going to give you money in gunias. And we used to say it, Linda, here with you. There has to be a budget. If you want to change it, do a supplementary budget and explain it. This is happening at a point in time when our debt burden is over 9.6 trillion, you see. We are having conversations with Bretton Woods institutions who have also told us, for us to give you money, you have to make all these changes in your regime and all this. So and what I am saying, Linda, is that the government has failed to communicate that to Kenyans and let them know that even the education reforms that are going on are not looking like what you want to see because of 1, 2, 3, 4. What the president has said is that kulikuwa na watu hapa na mulijua chenye walifanya. Si mulijua? But people will just say ndio because they are waiting for you to finish and then they receive their monies and go back home. The government has to think like a government and sit and ask yourself, so we said you are going to do this in the first 100 days. What have we done and what haven't we done? The government has continued to make promises, Linda, other than sitting and saying, we said we would do this, this is how we have done it. Telling Kenyans that we are going to give you free Wi-Fi. To do what with it?
Did you think free Wi-Fi is okay? Well, that also is debatable.
And relevant issues for now, other than that free Wi-Fi.
Okay, it is a world of technology. You have to cut to chase so that we can allow him to come in.
As much as we want to castigate this government in any critical manner, we must also understand that in fact there is no manna coming from heaven.
But that is what you would have sold earlier on.
Take into consideration that actually this government undertook this government with empty stores. That's where there was nothing.
Mheshimiwa, I will remind you that you are part of the Jubilee government.
And as much as it is Kenyans who are building their country, it is not angels.
You know that narrative is not going to sell.
They must allow the Kenyans. They should allow the government to collect and then.
How much more time? How much more time? And Wakili, I will allow you to come in. I know you have something else to say. Yes.
We've looked at the impact of yesterday's rally locally. Let us look at it regionally, then internationally. The legitimacy of a government is very critical for international relations.
Yes.
When Raila Odinga is saying he no longer calls President Uhuru Kenyatta Ruto as the president, he calls
in fact, he says Mr. William Ruto.
Remember the judgment of the BBI, where a judge called President Uhuru Kenyatta Mr. Then, how do you deal with that when you are dealing with the international relationship? Everybody worldwide knows that Raila controls
a massive
half of the country, less 200,000 votes. If this narrative goes on, the legitimacy of the Kenya Kwanza government becomes now questionable. When it moves down to say even cabinet ministers, cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, it is such a drastic question for international relations. So that Kenya has appointed President retired Uhuru Kenyatta to deal with mediation within the region where there is strife. We are supposed to be the beacon of other countries to understand how we are operating. Raila Odinga yesterday has put us on a collision course. that we are now a country that is almost like a banana country.
And as if you read my mind, Wakili, I still want us to get into the bottom of this, because reality is that we've witnessed across the world some matters in relation to election and even important matters of the country being investigated to the depth of it. If you remind ourselves, you know, on the question of what happened with Russia and the United States and the involvement in the election, there are instances where a country will get to a space where they'll have to dig deep into some matter. And sometimes some facts that are legit will come to the fore. In as much as we have exhausted the constitutional process, what next? An indictment, as Raila Odinga would put it, to the Supreme Court and to the legal frames that we have within ourselves. This goes and spills to the international community. What next?
And as Wakili answers, me I also want to hear the Wakili's wisdom on this. What does Wakili think that actually the UDA government should do to honor the karma of Raila Odinga?
Okay.
Must we go to another handshake?
Certainly
is that the solution?
not. Certainly not.
Number two, reader. Is Raila Odinga genuine on this? Because his karma is that the votes were stolen. Should we hear from angels, and should angels give us another view? Because there was a pronunciation of the Supreme Court, which was the last appeal in terms of our local appeals.
Yes.
What else should we do as a nation? Must we allow these jungle processes?
Okay. Just how jungle are they?
What I will answer Mheshimiwa like this. It is very irritating when you are seated somewhere eating nyama choma, like Uhuru Kenyatta eating nyama choma in Kajiado, anasema si tunakula nyama, wengine wanakula harufu. That is the Kenya Kwanza approach. That was Uhuru Kenyatta's approach. That was Kibaki's approach towards 2007. That was Moi's approach. The approach should be different.
Okay.
Because the history I've given is a history that a country can be destroyed by both people who love that country and those who are selfish. Raila Odinga has no interest. And that is what I'm trying to tell Mheshimiwa. If they are expecting Raila Odinga to assist them govern this country, they are daydreaming.
Okay. It's not a handshake.
Raila Odinga, his position is to make sure he wins power, even if it's today or 2027. This is the juxtaposed this position, Linda. In 2018, the then deputy president started going to Tanga. The president was ever crying that, William Ruto, please come, let us serve the people. He went to the people. He's the president of this country. Raila Odinga has put the president now in the same situation William Ruto put Uhuru Kenyatta. That he is not interested in assisting Kenya Kwanza government to run.
Right.
He is interested in putting up his campaign machinery for 2027.
And that's still going to have Right Honorable Raila Odinga for 2027.
You see, President Ruto did an experiment everybody dismissed, that you can campaign for 5 years. Everybody said he'll get fatigued.
And so they get into power and start.
Only for them to realize that that is the mode of this country.
Does the Right Honorable Raila Odinga then realize that there's an enemy within? By this I mean Kalonzo Musyoka, who's also interested in the presidency.
The politics of, for now, is the politics of appearing
relevant. Yeah.
You remember Kenya Kwanza, they had their Kindiki, they had their Gachagua, they had their William, they had their Musalia. All of them looked as presidential candidates. They came to decide their fate the last time. In politics for now, either the Azimio team stays together and they are slaughtered together, or they stay separate and they are slaughtered separately. So they will have to come together because their common enemy is Kenya Kwanza. And that is why you saw all of them there. They must be relevant. The Oparanyas who went to Kakamega are back because they have realized visibility in politics is everything. So what we are likely to see is that for 5 years, Kenya Kwanza is going to be derailed. The demonstration started yesterday. They were peaceful. They'll definitely go to be violent. It is always how demonstrations, for them to have an impact, they have got to be some violence. And once the violence is there, the police will have to come to bring law and order. Once the police come to bring law and order, and everybody internationally is watching TV 47, the skirmishes, the tear gases, the people being injured, the public image changes and the international image changes. That is the game plan for Raila Odinga.
Now that
and that is the question now William Ruto will be put to say that you are not tolerant, your government is not tolerant to dissent. That is the direction politics is going, which is, that's what I've said, Kenya Kwanza must look for a way.
Yeah.
I'm not way to accommodate. No. Me, I'm not Kenya Kwanza. Neither have they told me to do their communication. It is a question that the mandate this country gave it to Kenya Kwanza.
We take a short break.
Food costs and the reality of every problem in this country, only one government. And that's what the president told people in Luo Nyanza, that don't expect any other government to come. The government that is there is the president's government, and I've told every Kenyan as a constitutional lawyer that unless William Ruto resigns, unless William Ruto is impeached, he is the validly elected, sworn-in president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of this country until the elections of 2027. And
nobody else, take a short break.
Nobody can challenge that.
Yes, we'll take a short break and then we briefly come and talk about the comeback of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, you would want to say, and especially in relation to 2027. Let's take a short break. We're back.
Yeah, like you see, these are the fabrics we use for the sofas. Yeah, there are different types of fabrics.
Sabak.
This is the best way to go. Eat color, eat raw, you know, like this is alive. Well, 2022 is behind us. 2023 is here with us. What are your plans? We here at TV47's Morning Cafe have great plans for you. We're talking about information, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about the greatness for the year. So make sure that you're always with us every morning.
Kwa muonekano wao, hauwezi ukajua waliopitia. Kwa sura zao zinapong'aa, hauwezi ukafahamu changamoto zao. Nyuma yao ipo story na historia. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakupa nafasi kuweza kuwafahamu kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea. Nami Elizabeth Mutu.
Your health matters, and Body Garage is here to guide you on it.
Someone's, after using the medication, the virus number of the HIV in someone's body will start to go.
My medication, wherever I go, I must make sure I'm committed to my medication. Yes. And I should watch what I'm eating. I should not just eat from everywhere or not just eat anything.
We talk mental, physical, and spiritual health. Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Lover of farming? Well, Kilimo Diaries is your home for different farming ventures, crops, animals, and so much more. Every Sunday,
We still are getting or trying to get a hold of Professor. You know, clearly the technology can sometimes fail us, but all the same, once we do, we'll loop him in studio. Honorable Jimmy Gakuya, Kevin Osido, who's a governance expert, as well as Wakili Danstan Omari. You speak of a possible comeback of Right Honorable Raila Odinga in 2027, and maybe as the constitution is, nothing would lock him out. Peter Principle, if we can remind ourselves of that, speaks of a situation where one can rise to ranks in a certain job space, and to a point of them getting to a space where there's like respectable incompetence, in the sense that this man has played this game, has rose to ranks to a level where now this rank requires different tactics. And looking at the generation today, looking at the Kenya of today, to imagine that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga would be able to steer the ship in 2027 with a change of things, will it be
Linda,
something realistic?
It is not far-fetched. It is actually realistic, because other than God and natural attrition, there is nothing that stops him from being president, organizing himself to be president. And we have seen this happen since the time when he actually told Kenyans that he wants to be president. And almost every 5 years, we have seen the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga actually running for presidency, including 2022, when he told us he even didn't want to be president, you know. And then he said that it's people who went and told him that we still need you to run. And he actually ran. So the kind of organizing that he is doing right now in the name of Baraza la Wananchi and all these conversations that he is having, they are constitutional. And the former Prime Minister is, of course, the political animal, if I could say that he actually is. And if you look at history, even of other countries like the United States of America, we have people who have run for office and actually ascended into office. And you go to United Kingdom, the same thing. We have people who have run for office and lost, run for office and lost, and run for office and lost, and actually became prime ministers of countries. And these people are the names like Abraham Lincoln, for instance, you know. So we would not be at I would not be at the best place to say that he cannot run. Now, in addition to that is also to look at the interests. What are the interests that we are looking at today? And you, of course, have talked about one of those interests, which is the dynamics of generations and age. But looking at what politics really is, you get to a point where you say, we don't need the youth vote, for example. We don't need maybe the middle class vote, which is what Kenya Kwanza government did for 2022 elections. They said we want to go and look at the downtrodden, and they came up with a narrative called bottom up. And they said this is a hustler generation, is a hustler nation. And they appealed to people who more or less looked like hustlers. But if you look at the kind of conversation that the former Prime Minister is having and the people that he is meeting, beginning with his inaugural Baraza la Wananchi at Jivanji Gardens, you know, just after elections. And he said, you are the hustlers. You are the people that the government needs to be talking to. Unfortunately, they are now in very high places. They can't get to you. And it's a conversation that if you listen to even the politicians that spoke and issued press conferences ahead of yesterday's meeting, they were saying that the hustler government has failed to appeal to hustlers. And so maybe they are also identifying a special group of people that they have a feeling that did not listen to their message, if that is the direction that you want to say, or rather take, because as Emilio has said, our election was stolen. But legally speaking, all the processes, as we are saying, have already been dealt with. They've been adjudicated and they've been dispensed with. Now, you want to go back as a team and say, where did we lose it? What is it that we're not doing right? And how can we be able to change it? Which is what I would imagine that the former Prime Minister and his team are actually picking up. Move on to that and look at the regional conversations. This gentleman just came from speaking to a president from South Africa. And then he jets into the country, 12:30, and heads to Kamukunji.
Yeah.
What is it that he discusses with the presidents? What kind of image does he tell them about President William Ruto? If President Cyril Ramaphosa was here a few weeks ago, and then suddenly the former Prime Minister meets with him and we see them chatting and having very nice conversations, and then he gets into the country and he doesn't even say that I have met your colleague in South Africa and he has sent you greetings. Instead he says, we don't acknowledge
which he must have done anyway.
I don't think he did. And he says, we don't acknowledge your government. And What does that even look like when he's talking to AU leaders? Because he's a head of infrastructure at the AU African Union. When he's invited to those panels and they are having those closed-door meetings that are outside the media, how much of energy does he put to tell them that actually that gentleman you call president stole my victory, and we have the evidence, we have the bombshell. And if you just tune into our local media stations and call your ambassadors to give you briefs, you will listen to me say it. How does that look like to President William Ruto? Which is why, for me, the former Prime Minister is setting up for a battle which is not for now, is a battle for 2027.
Okay.
And if you look at his forays, for instance, he's met with the British High Commissioner of Kenya. He's met with the US ambassador, you know, the madam. And he continues to have bilateral conversations with ambassadors, you know. What does this mean to a sitting president, William Samoei Arap Ruto? I think that the government needs to do much more in terms of not appealing to the former Prime Minister, but actually beginning to make Kenyans feel the weight and the power of a government. Because that is what I think the former Prime Minister wants to make the international community look like, that the president we have is incompetent, he's unable to deal with certain serious issues. He wants to pacify the people who probably did not vote for him, which in fact, as I said earlier on, the government needs to be magnanimous enough to communicate to them and let them know that, yes, we know you did not vote for us. But there's a way in which we can do this thing to make all of us patriotic and lovers of this country and put our hands on deck together and build a Kenya that transcends any other president. Because it doesn't have to be President Raila Odinga. Maybe it's a president that Kenya didn't have.
Okay.
But what do other presidents do? So I think the shortest response to your question is none of us can decide when and how President Raila becomes president.
Okay.
But that is really based on the politics, how it is done, and the strategies that the government of the day puts to the fore, including the dignity, Linda, that is given to what we call the leader of official opposition.
Allow us to sum it up by looping in Professor Macharia Munene, who's an international relations expert. And now that we have raised quite important concerns, I think he's in a better position to perhaps just, unpack this for us. Professor Macharia Munene joins us virtually, political historian, international relations expert. Professor, lots of concern in relation to what plays out in the country. And what then it means, of course, internationally. If you may remember, during the time of the elections, or during this time when it was heated in terms of campaigns, there were whispers that there was an involvement, which is always there, of the international community in terms of how the elections would shape. Some would argue that, well, it was about the European Union, the United States. This one's that Osido speaks of, coming in to support President William Ruto. What do you make of the space today, and especially looking at the events of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga landing into the country and holding this Kamukunji, and the allegations that have been there, and some arguing that this is just a political game that really does not end anywhere?
Well, thank you. For one, the question does arise, and I think it was Dunstan who pointed out, comes from talking to Cyril Ramaphosa, and immediately he launches this big rally.
Is Kevin here?
It's Kevin, okay. The big rally at Kamukunji, and Kamukunji is symbolic, is nothing else. It's a tiny place which is very easy to fill with people, and it has historical symbolism that one looks at. So the question of what it is that is being seen out there, outside Kenya, is another matter, because Raila is himself a force, a respected force. What does that mean for Kenya as a country, and relations with South Africa, another power that may be? This another symbolism of the meeting yesterday was the acceptance by Kalonzo Musyoka and the other people in Azimio that Raila is their leader, and therefore there is not competition anymore. There was a time when it looked as if Kalonzo was fighting very hard to replace Raila as the leader, but now that yesterday demonstrated that he too has accepted that Raila is the leader, and therefore most likely the candidate in 2027. So I think it was almost settled yesterday through that symbolism of itself. as for the President, William Ruto, he really does need to rethink properly what it is his government is up to or how it is projected. As much as he tries to win over those who did not support him, he also has the threat of those who supported him leaving him because of some sort of dissatisfaction one way or the other. So it's a balancing act, which is not very a nice place to be in if you are president. For Raila, he is finding his groove. He's now beginning to look like the old fighter that he used to be and reclaim his place as supposedly the champion of the poor because that position was taken from him by Ruto. Actually, Ruto just stole it from him. So to regain it is going to be a stiff battle. So the question that comes up, how ready is Ruto to deal with the revived or rejuvenated Raila, and how would the rest of the international community take this new development, because it is a development that needs watching. And we have the phenomenon of election denial is now becoming as if it's acceptable, given what happened in the US and in Brazil. So is this going to be a norm? And it's something to watch.
All right, Professor, just to set the record straight, there are people who would look at you and as well Macharia Gaitho and argue that maybe you're the one who's making this proposal. Macharia Gaitho, on the papers this morning, opines that a more reasonable demand might be for an audit that includes a recount of all the votes cast, presuming Mr. Chebukati and his team of commissioners did not spirit them away on the retirement. There's a story that, of course, in relation to what it is that is playing out, they'd better know that it is not you. But what would you say about this proposal?
Well, Macharia Gaitho and I have a problem. Because sometimes I've been mistaken for him, or maybe he has been mistaken for me. I don't know why that is the case, but it has happened. And maybe we should settle that somewhere else. But yes, there is a point here. We do need a serious audit. And I think I've said it before, a Kriegler type of commission to investigate everything and anything that happened during these elections, particularly that fracas at Bomas, which was a disaster and a disgrace that it happened. But everything around that election needs to be investigated so that we settle this matter once and for all. Because if it is not properly investigated and the truth come out, if there was, as Jeremiah Kioni was claiming the other day, 3 million votes disappeared somehow, and or shifted camp. We need that proper investigation. And if it needs recounting, with time, it's not going to be given one day to do it. A proper recounting, and that's why an investigation, a Kriegler type of investigation, would be very good. So if you remember what Kriegler did, he recounted everything that was in dispute at KICC. And after he recounted, he came at the conclusion and said there was no theft at KICC. So we also need a proper recount of almost everything, tallying everything. And the commission itself should be a balanced commission. It should have equal numbers of commissioners from both sides, the Azimio and the Kenya Kwanza, and of course, probably some international organ in between. The way the Kriegler thing was. But yes, I agree, there is need for a proper audit, not just of the vote, but everything.
Well, we did not be opening a Pandora's box, and the gentlemen here agree that we have exhausted the processes as declared by the Constitution. But well, time will tell. We can only wait to see what direction this subject takes.
Lina, that's quite critical, I believe.
Yeah.
And I don't think in any way it might change what it is right now. I don't think that in any way, even if we had that kind of a commission, I don't think it will take away the power of President William Ruto to be president. Maybe it might just do what the Supreme Court is clearly meant to do, which is to strengthen systems and make judgments on what lessons that we need to learn. The only other option again would be that if, like the Azimio la Umoja flag bearer said, that the president needs to resign. This was an election, and it was not just meant for the presidential seat. We had 6 seats under the same laws, same rules, same commission. So what that means is that the governors of Azimio that were elected would have to resign, the members of parliament, the National Assembly, the senators, the MCAs.
Because it would indict the entire
Exactly.
process. Okay.
So there are calls that even as we make them, for instance, when we see big crowds, we need to also check our words and just look at how they would be interpreted. Because it doesn't mean that when the president resigns, the governor stays in office. And it doesn't mean that even if President William Ruto chose today as a God-fearing person, if I could say that, and he resigned, it doesn't mean that that win would be taken and given to the former prime minister. Due process has to be followed in the manner in which he becomes president. Is it validly done and all that? So I agree with the tribunals and all these things. They are constitutional. But it doesn't really mean that even if we set up that kind of a tribunal and a Kriegler-like commission for 2007, 2008 post-election violence, whose consequences we still are looking at. The Agenda 4 issues, not all of them have been dealt with.
Right.
We had political issues that needed to be done. We had economic issues. We had social issues, you know, and all those transitional issues that the commission actually asked to be recommended to be put in place. So there are good lessons that Kenya is learning out of all these issues, but I think it is good that we have a very progressive constitution that already foresaw all these gaps and put them in more or less what I could call a black and white paper.
Paper.
Yeah.
All right.
Leader, if you allow me just to have a light on that, I just want to sum up by saying it's a high time that Raila Odinga should give this country a breath, because we cannot be tolerate these skirmishes every other time. Kenyans need a break so that at least we can settle and move on. And if we cannot move on in every single election casted, then it tells that actually we have a baggage that actually we cannot be able to dislodge ourselves. We cannot start to say that Kenyans must expect that actually if it's an election, if it is being supervised and taken through by a Kenyan, it cannot be real until when an angel will come in.
The institutions,
yes. Therefore, if we fail to respect our institution in that big way, then it tells you that we are wrong somewhere. And it cannot be able to be this way. That if not Raila Odinga has cooked it, then it is not sweet. It cannot be trusted. This can't work. We must allow the decisions and the verdict of the people. Kenyans did their part, and let us honor their verdict and move on. And that is the reason why, that's the reason I would say it is a high time even Raila should sympathize with this country. Allow this country to move on. Let Kenya grow. Because surely, if we live in these skirmishes, how do you expect any government to prosper? Yes, and for sure, it does not mean that, in fact, if later you are not part of the government, that government cannot be a government. Yes, just do your watchdog, but don't do it in such kind of ban. It should not be seen as if there's a fire here.
Okay, wait a minute. He speaks about the institutions, and this as well, is in relation to this matter, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, to be precise. And of course, we are on that conversation, or that space of a conversation of having, another commission on board. The president is sending to law this bill on the IEBC yesterday. I mean, what do you make of what would be the next process, and especially looking at the case that you're handling right now?
Well, first and foremost, the term of the commissioners has ended. A law was assented by the president after passing parliament on who can be in the selection committee. I hope nobody goes to court to challenge that law. If it is not challenged, the procedure will proceed and people will apply for those jobs and get the jobs. Of great concern, for example, is the issue that I want to raise. There is a two-pronged position. The president and his team are saying Azimio wanted to subvert the will of the people. On the other side, Azimio is saying the IEBC chair and his people subverted the will of people for the benefit of the president and Kenya Kwanza. These are two positions that are not very clear. Two, At the center of the people who subverted these are two groups. The National Security Council, 4 people that came to bomb us. And also eminent Kenyans, 4 of them, that is Tuju, that is Amos Wako, that is Charity Ngilu, and also Chalombobu Wakili. Right. The simple question every Kenyan should ask, bombers was a tallying center.
Yeah.
National.
A constitutional bedroom for only commissioners and agents of parties. How did the Wakos and the Charity Ngilu get into access to have a meeting with the commissioners at midnight? How did we can talk about the National Security Council? Probably they might have said it was a serious security issue.
Yeah.
How did the Chebukati allow Charity Ngilu and the group to come to Bomas, meet commissioners at night? There is no law that allows because Chebukati was now the elections, the returning officer. How many people of Kenya Kwanza also had meetings there? How many people of other political parties were allowed there? Under which law do we get that elders can come to see the commissioners? And those are the questions that we are raising to Chebukati. Is it that there was money that Chebukati was expecting these people to bring at night?
Okay.
So that it
would allow access.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Look at the timing. This story has never been told to anybody. Why will these people come? Was there in communication that bring 10 billion? They brought 8 billion. They were chased. And those are the questions that Azimio is raising.
Okay.
Because just like a judicial process, if you have improper contact with a judge handling your matter, you go to see the judge at his bedroom or at a car park at midnight.
This process is already compromised.
That is the question that we are pushing as Azimio, that let them not tell us that there were people who came to tell them to change the will of the people. How did these people get invited into the constitutional bedroom? A bedroom that has only been given by people, 50 million Kenyans, to Chebukati and 6 commissioners and the 4 agents of the 4 presidential candidates. Did the elders from Wajakoya's team get also inside? The elders from what was the other candidate? There was another presidential candidate.
Yes, Waiga Maore.
Did his elders also get it? Did the elders of President Ruto get it? It is such a serious issue that this narrative of changing the will of the people needs to be investigated, and I agree with you.
And on these grounds, then clearly
that a serious, and that's why I agree with the professor, that a serious investigation, a serious interrogation needs to be conducted. How many people went there at night? How much money did they take there at night? Or how much money did they not take there at night? You cannot fathom that question. This is a theater, a maternity theater, where it is only the lady delivering and the doctors present. How do you allow?
And therefore, this is a clear indication that there is interference, outright interference.
That's the question I'm raising.
Professor, can we even ever imagine of a scenario where the independent bodies in this country then can be independent to that level?
Imagine, and we should imagine, that it can happen. But for that to happen, we need to change the attitude of our leaders, political leaders and the competitors, because it is the interference with the institutions comes from the negative attitude that some of our leaders display. When they imagine they can persuade the commission to think one way or the other instead of doing their job. Then there's an attitude problem that needs to be examined, why they think they can persuade the commission in one way or another. But it can be done. We also need to be careful not to throw blanket statements on things that can even boomerang to the fact that we then don't get confused. So what we need now is clarity and to respect the institutions and to ensure that the people we put in positions of responsibility are honest people, credible people, and good Kenyans. Sometimes we put people who even do not know what the interests of the country are. When you have people who do not know or seem to know what the interests of the country are, then they end up messing up, sometimes out of ignorance and sometimes out of mischief. But these can be corrected with time. And so there's no need to be overly anxious that things, the country is getting lost. It's not getting lost, but it is going to be needing a lot of work, and it can be done. Yes, it will come to that time, with time.
All right, fair enough. Mheshimiwa, that in relation to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, you speak, passionately about the fact that there's need for us to trust our very own institutions. But listening to what it is that Wakili raises and what questions have been raised by the Azimio team, many Kenyans, can we even begin to trust that, the figures that we put there to man these independent bodies then are formidable enough? And remember, these figures will always go through the parliament for vetting process. Allow us to take a short break and then we come back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, like you see, these are the fabrics we use for the sofas. Yeah, there are different types of fabrics.
Sabak.
It is the best way to go. Eat color, eat raw, like this is alive. Well, 2022 is behind us. 2023 is here with us. What are your plans? We here at TV47's Morning Cafe have great plans for you. We're talking about information, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about the greatness for the year. So make sure that you're always with us every morning.
Kwa muonekano wao hauwezi ukajua waliopitia, kwa sura zao zinapong'aa hauwezi ukafahamu changamoto zao. Nyuma yao ipo stori na historia. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kuweza kuwafahamu kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea. Nami Elizabeth Michuku.
Your health matters, and Body Garage is here to guide you on it.
Someone's, after using the medication, the virus number of the HIV in someone's body will start to go.
My medication, wherever I go, I must make sure I'm committed to my medication. Yes, and I should watch what I'm eating. I should not just eat from everywhere or not just eat anything.
We talk mental, physical, and spiritual health. Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Lover of farming? Well, Kilimo Diaries is your home for different farming ventures, crops, animals, and so much more. Every Sunday. With a new year comes endless possibilities, and as we continue,
All right, welcome back. The last laps of this very segment, and we still are having this conversation of Masit, who's amongst the Cherera 4, facing the tribunal as well. The conversation as to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is on. Gulie and we're as well speaking to this and saying that, at some point, as the commissioners, they were told that it is either Right Honorable Raila Odinga or a runoff. One would want to ask, why didn't they declare this then? They are declaring it right now. Why is it that then Wakili, who's part and parcel of this case, is also raising some of these, fundamental questions? And you ask yourself, how can you confidently say that Chebukati is a hero, as the Kenya Kwanza team would rightfully say?
One thing, Linda, let me tell you. The statements that are coming from one of the commissions, Gurie, actually are not new to Kenyans. They repeated this during that time. And actually they did it, they said that actually there were people, and Tunju was mentioned, and others. And thereafter, there was a mention of Security Council agencies, who are part of which the Commissioner of Police were part of them, and others. In this particular case, I would like to say the independence of these institutions actually was being invented. And I can tell you for sure, there is no way that an electoral body can be able to supervise itself in terms of security. The security is being provided by the government, and it has to be the sitting government. Okay. And let me tell you, any government can use what we call windows and back doors to sneak their own things. And this is what happened to bombers. The bombers was not under the control of the Chebukati. I can tell you, even by the time when actually we have been told that actually there was a plan even to hijack him from the same premises. It was through the security agencies. Because surely, who is Chebukati? Chebukati is just an individual person. He can be Chebukati when security is within him.
The chair of the commission. But I can tell you, the chair of the commission. And I can repeat here that actually I was in presence of bombers of Kenya when things were going in smoke, and when Chebukati was powerless, when he was being invoked by goons at a point where the security agencies were watching, and the president could not assist the chairman and his team. What do you think the chairman could do without this security? Anything could be compromised if security is not on your side. Yes, and this particular, we cannot blame the commissioners. We can only blame the government then, which was willing to intrude and overturn the election. But at least this security was accorded, and that has been accepted at some point. And if the security was on the side of the government, why is it that the declaration then favored you people? But anyway.
The declaration was done by whisk of miracle. Because there was a battle between the Red Belts and Kenya Police Service. Kenya Police Force was totally compromised. Their exercise was protected and shielded by the Beret team, the Red Belt. They are the people. Otherwise, if we could have expected that actually we are getting the result through the Kenya Police Service, we couldn't get it.
All right, there's
Linda,
this. Yes.
These issues are serious issues because two things. One, Bomas of Kenya was a national tallying center, which no other election was being either followed through or declared other than the presidential ticket, because we didn't see any other certificates other than the presidential ticket being issued there, number one. Number two, Bomas of Kenya was a national security site, an NSS, for which now accreditation even for people who would then access that site would be guaranteed almost 9 sets of security measures, because you had the accreditation badge, then you had, if you have a car, you have your car with the exact number plate fitted in. Then you had the coded small badge, which you swipe and then you go in through the security camera. Exactly. Yes. For any other individuals who are not accredited to get into Bomas,
no access.
What was their business? I think those are fundamental questions, which now, if the tribunal that we are talking about, or a Justice Kriegler similar like commission would be put in place, these are the questions that I think the commission or the accrediting officer needs to help Kenyans to understand. That is one side. We've had other leaders, for example, Mheshimiwa Raphael Tuju, my former MP, say that commissioners went to his house and even had CCTV cameras and he was willing to share them.
Yeah.
And that he didn't see these individuals as commissioners but as auctioneers. What does that mean? Yeah. What do auctioneers do? What is the TOR and role of
the highest bidder?
The election was under...
Maybe the election was auctioned. Because those are the questions that Kenyans are saying, and as Professor also said, that would help us lead towards a Justice Kriegler-like led commission to help us answer these questions. Because remember, we are in the process of putting together a new IEBC commission. Yeah? These are lessons that will help us underscore what kind of people should apply and actually get elected. And I mean appointed as commissioners of the IEBC. What kind of security measures, including vetting of individuals that are made commissioners, what kind of forms should we be taking and asking them, do you look like this? Have you ever commissioned auctioned anything? Can you visit Bomas at night, at midnight? You know, yeah, so that we understand exactly what went wrong, who slept on the job, like Mheshimiwa is saying that GSU took over Bomas, on whose authority? And why does Kenya Kwanza have a feeling that Kenya Police Service was actually compromised, you know? And we saw a lot of drama at Bomas. We have seen a lot of relations being poured on Chebukati and almost being crowned as the 22nd Man of the Year, you know, 2022 Man of the Year. Amidst all these confusions, what does crowning Chebukati as a hero by the president himself mean? You know, including being given a luncheon for all commissioners and chairs and the president being there, the attorney general, the former chief justices, the chief justice and all this. What does that mean to people who are asking very difficult questions, including the ongoing tribunal led by Justice Muchelule? What do all these actions mean to ongoing processes, and would there be chances? Because I at least looked at what was going on at KICD yesterday, and where Professor Gulie was being asked, what kind of forms did you give to commissioners before they walked out? What was the mood like? You are saying you handed over 500 page document. Can you show us? And he was at pains even to show what they issued. Then he said, but there was a 3-page document, you know, which is not what was in his affidavit. Linda, these are questions which might not interest very many Kenyans, but for people who are interested in leadership and governance and electoral management processes, because the 2027 election process, with the issuance of the post-election evaluation report by IEBC about a week ago, has already begun. But we have serious issues that only the chairman of the commission and the commissioners can help us answer.
And the chairman,
best way
or the former
to answer
chairman,
those
so
questions, yes, including how we put in the next commissioners, are questions which we cannot run away from. So I think it would be much more patriotic of them and very honorable of them to come up and just be open, particularly because now even your term has expired, awaiting maybe to be appointed an ambassador. Of course, they told us they'll go home and take care of camels and all that. It is not common to see people like Chebukati going home to just sleep. But before they take over their next call of duty and posts, can they help Kenyans understand the difficult questions?
We'll be watching Chebukati today, and Wakili will as well be watching to see how then this unfolds. I want us to exit this stage shortly, but not before we just speak something to this trend, and I don't know whether it's a trend of withdrawal of cases. Perhaps a good thing in terms of making sure that justice then is accorded, because if some of these cases were politically instigated, were more or less like witch hunt, I think it's only fair that justice is accorded to these individuals that have been, that have allegations on their head. But most importantly, we also need to get to the bottom of it. Professor Macharia Monene, we have seen all these cases that have been dropped so far. The president saying that he has nothing to do with them, but equally an acknowledgement that these were cases that were brought to the fore with the coercion of the previous regime, the DPP acknowledging this. And we ask ourselves, if at that point, the DPP DPP's office was compromised to that level. How can we trust the DPP's office today to, spearhead some of these cases, to go to levels of withdrawal? And in this case, I am talking about, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, dropping the 1.1 billion corruption charges against former NHIF CEO Geoffrey Mwangi. We could say there's no basis, but we also agree that there's a problem in NHIF.
Yes, there is an image problem, perception problem on the part of the DPP. Because when he brought these cases initially to the court, the implication there was that he was an independent person, that he looked at the evidence and there was sufficient evidence to prosecute these people. At that time, I remember there was that occasional friction with the DCI, some files being returned and all those kind of, and wondering whether some proper investigations had been done. So the impression given at the time was that everything was in order and that these people were being prosecuted because there was enough evidence to do that. What we are now being told is that he did not do that he prosecuted people without evidence, that he did all those things. Now, maybe there was pressure, yet we were told that he was independent and he was not succumbing to any pressure. So the now image saying that he is withdrawing because there is no evidence or not enough evidence. The question then comes in as you implied, is he also under pressure, which he cannot admit that he is under pressure? Is it then, in this instance, did he start doing things in those days, starting with the conclusion that you need to indict so and so, so and so and so and so, and then go and look for the evidence afterwards, which is not there? Could that be the case? Because that's the implication that's coming out right now. And the reasons being given are not adequate to explain the previous behavior. If he could explain that, then maybe people might be satisfied. Right now, there are a lot of questions that go on. It's almost like sounds like the ICC, which started with the conclusions and then went looking for evidence.
and yes, before Wakili comes in, clearly, Mheshimiwa.
I can just tell the viewers that, in fact, there is no difference between when the powers were under the AG and when the AG has powers of non-prosecute, where he could praise the non-prosecute and that was the stop and the termination of a case. And today, those powers were being transferred to the office of the DPP. And in case he realized that at least even these matters going to the end, he cannot be able to, the evidence cannot support his case to the conclusion and get the verdict. Therefore, if he views that this is the case, this is the nature of the outcome, it is at his wisdom, then he can decide to stop matter at any stage. And this is not criminal, and we cannot castigate to him because his powers entrusted to him by our constitution.
Okay. Yes. All right. So beyond the constitution, there are some individuals that would decide to just interfere, and that these institutions, again, these investigative bodies and agencies would gladly succumb to that pressure. How can we trust them to handle our cases anyway?
I want to, as one of the advocates in those matters, put this to rest to Kenyans. We created an office called the Director of Public Prosecutions under Article 157 with the mandate sole to decide to charge, sole to decide to terminate, sole to decide to withdraw, but subject to 157.8, the court. Nowhere in this country can one Nordin Haji go and terminate a matter.
Without...
He has no power.
Okay.
I want this to go out because there are more than 40 million viewers on TV 47 now, and they want this clear. The DPP has no power at all to withdraw a matter. He makes an application, and pursuant to Article 157.8, the court, it is the judiciary that terminates. Under the old constitution, it was the DPP, then under the Attorney General's office, who could terminate. Number two, can the DPP, what will make the DPP charge and later terminate, request for termination? One, under the Criminal Procedure Code, even after somebody has been charged, investigations are continued. Investigations will stop when the prosecution has finished their case. In the course of investigations, some new information is likely to be given to the Director of Public Prosecution. And therefore, based on the new evidence that is exonerating in nature, the DPP will look at Article 157(11). That no innocent person should be framed, should be charged, should just be prosecuted when there is no sufficient evidence. It is the duty Kenyans gave to the Director of Public Prosecution to protect one innocent person against the public mood. So, has the DPP exercised this matter? I'll give anybody who wants to check, can check the annual reports of the Director of Public Prosecution to court, to Parliament. An average of 18,000 cases are withdrawn yearly. All those cases are Kenyans and foreigners who have been charged in a criminal matter. We are now narrowing to 3-4 cases because they are politicians. They are not politicians when they are accused people in court.
And Wakili, you heard me well when I was directing this question to the professor, that it's fine. There could be some truth in what it is that is being said. And, you know, if this is justice for them, I think it should be accorded. But we also perhaps know that there's an underlying problem in NHIF. The fact that Kenyans would release their funds out there, but really do not get value. There is a problem that has been acknowledged, even with the current regime. So what happens to this? I mean, does it then mean that the investigations continue? And especially when you know that some of these heinous activities played out under the watch of these individuals that are being exonerated.
I want to put it very clearly. All these matters are withdrawn under Section 87A. It is not acquittal. If any evidence is adduced,
then they revive the case.
They revive. And that is, I want to bring it to the attention that in the ICC matter, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President William Ruto have not been acquitted. The matter, it was withdrawn similar. If you have any evidence against NHIF, walk to the police, produce the evidence, he'll be arrested. But the general terminology that because there is a problem at NHIF, then we have a mob lynch that arrests the CEO. The country is a country that chose the rule of law. If you have evidence, cogent evidence, bring to Linda here on TV 47 against Omari, against Gakuya, against Kevin, against anybody, then they will be aired. That person will be rearrested. So, and this is the problem that we have. The current DPP, one Mr. Nurdin Haji, has done issues. It is as lawyers. I myself have written more than 13 letters to him, producing evidence. For example, in the case of my client Aisha Juma Waziri, we produced evidence that she has never owned a gun. She has never trained on how to shoot. The person died out of a gunshot. She could have been a state witness to say what she saw. So that is, out of it, the DPP agreed with our evidence and we withdrew those matters. So it is not about anybody being political or exerting pressure. And this message should go to everybody that if you have a criminal matter in court, whether it is a theft, an alleged theft of chicken, write a letter to the Director of Public Prosecution explaining yourself why you think the police either
failed to see this, or they did not get it right, or they were bribed and they framed you. The DPP will review whether it is in which police station. The whole country, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution has offices. Write a letter for review for free, and present your position, and if your evidence outweighs the evidence that is against you, the matter will be withdrawn. So let us not sensationalize matters, because either the deputy president or the ministers or what the CSS, they are not deputy presidents in court. They are accused people. So their lawyers wrote letters and they exonerated them.
And I think that's well articulated. Thank you so much, Wakili, for that. And you know, after all, they say it's the courts are courts of evidence and facts. And so what it is that you present is what carries the day. We have to close in exactly 3 minutes.
Yeah, just to add on to what Wakili has said. You know, the judiciary is also an arm of government. And the DPP and whatever happens in court is not a preserve of whoever we see. So I think it would also be important for us to maybe set up another day, one time, to help Kenyans understand how the court works. What is the role of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions? So if we talk about evidence, so what is the role of the DCI, you know, criminal intelligence and of course, evidence gathering? Where does the police who arrests you come in? And how come it is someone else who takes over? And what are your rights as an arrested person when evidence issues are being adduced? How do you come in? What is the role of your lawyer in court or your advocate? What if you don't have an advocate? Can you, as a citizen, who then represents you in court? Because I think some of these conversations, in the view of the Kenyan, the word is that you are a cabinet secretary, or you are a former NHIF CEO, so you are very close to the president, or we have seen cases of the deputy president being thrown away, and maybe you are in the same camp as Kenya Kwanza, so maybe you know the judges, or you more or less have an influence. That is what probably goes on in the mind of the Kenyan. But the details around what actually happens, like Wakili is saying it, is not known to as many Kenyans. So I think it is important for us to also maybe think through how we can empower citizens by passing this information so that they actually understand from the moment you are arrested, what happens? What is the 48 hours that if there is no evidence, you should be released by the police? You know, so there's a lot that happens, which I think not many Kenyans are aware about, as opposed to why would it be that a boy who is hungry in the village and takes somebody's chicken and roasts it is arrested for 18 years, for example. And somebody who's run away with 1.8 billion from 2018 to 2022 is only 4 years, you know. And then suddenly the 1.1 billion is gone, for example, and the boy is still in jail. You know, what are the dynamics around all these concerns?
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And on this very note, we have to close because we have something else coming in or coming up at exactly 8:30. Honorable Member of Parliament of Embakasi North.
Rita, you want to say you have some
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Wow.
It has run.
It has to be strictly 30 seconds.
Thank you, Rita. My parting shot is that this country is ours, and all of us has a duty to preserve it. I think this country requires men and women who will think on how to live it better than we found it. And therefore, at this cause, any government elected by the people we should not respect the government, but we must respect those voices who went to the voting polling stations and voted for that government. And therefore, I would think that in fact, whoever think that actually we can bring any kind of tides to and dislodge this government, I would just make an appeal, and a very strong appeal. Let us allow this government to prosper. Let us support this government, whether we're in opposition or whether we're in the government, so that at least at the end of the day, if Kenya does well, all of us does well. Indeed. If Kenya goes long, all of us will be under the same roof, and we can only be marked as Kenyans. So let us sort our issues internally, and where there are issues, can we just dialogue them?
All right.
Instead of taking them to the public.
All right, fair enough. Professor and Wakili, you'll allow me not to give you the latitude to give us the parting shots, and that is to say that we hope to have you some other time. Professor Macharia Monene was joining us virtually, political historian. Asante sana for the great insights. Asante sana for your time as well. Wakili, yes, advocate of the High Court, Danstan Omari, asante sana once again for creating time to be here. And of course, the Executive Director, County Governance Watch, thank you so much for creating time to be with us. That is none other than Kevin Osido. And lastly, the Member of Parliament of Embakasi North,